friends, and welcome to another episode of Dark Side of the Word, a dark podcast for all our dark story lovers. My name is Kait, and I am here with my clever co-host, CJ.
Hello, everybody. I see you have another co-host that just went by behind you as well.
He's been a little naughty boy. I was recording a book review before this, and he decided to pitch a fit, stomp out of the room, go and shut a door, and then came in and just begged for attention the whole time, as you can see.
These animals have no respect for professionalism.
He's like, why am I not on camera, Mom? I'm the star of the show.
Seriously. Cuteness always reigns supreme.
Okay, now that we got the dog all quiet. Hopefully. I don't know. I've got the other one here now.
I'm waiting for a bark to just come from behind you.
Anyway, it is the third episode of the month, which means it is time for our industry topic. And we touched on this in our writer's update, where we talked about CJ finally getting a yes with her hybrid publishing. So we decided that this is a really great topic to go a little bit more in depth with, especially because, I mean, I wouldn't say we're new to writing in this realm, but I think hybrid publishing just kind of like popped up for us in a way.
Yeah.
And so CJ has been through this experience for us. She has been in the trenches learning all this stuff, and she is going to lead the industry podcast episode today, and I am handing it off to CJ.
I know you get very excited when you don't have to lead the industry topic things, but it just puts this fear within me that I don't think I will ever get used to. I don't know how you do this, like every month. Every podcast for us.
If you just had not gone through this experience, you wouldn't have to do this then. But you had to decide that you wanted to look into hybrid publishing. This is all your fault.
I am an overachiever. What can I say? I next time will be much more of a slacker so I don't get myself in these situations.
I would recommend that.
Okay. So, hybrid publishing. I did not know anything about hybrid publishing until about 2 months ago when I was offered an ARC to review for a well-read tart from a hybrid publisher. So I always research publishers I've never heard before. So when I started looking into this particular one, I actually really liked what I saw. And that led me to look at what hybrid publishers are in general, since, again, I had never heard of them before, and what they can do for authors.
Exactly. So when I got my pre-screening job with Publishers Weekly, the freelance job with them about a year ago, I have been seeing a lot more hybrid publishing because I do mostly self-published works that I pre-screen. And one of our things is to look out if someone submitted that I was actually published. So I see all these names where it's not the author's name attached. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, is this like a traditionally published book? Like, yeah. And then I'll Google them, and so I'll see all this like hybrid publishing stuff. So it's something I've not as recently touched on, but it's still something new I saw, and it is definitely like making the waves and gaining a lot of steam and traction out in the world.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get bigger since I think it's really filling a need in the market. So that's why we're talking about it today. So let's start with the basics. What is hybrid publishing? So I like to think of it as a compromise between self-publishing and traditional publishing. The models will differ from company to company, but essentially the author contributes financially to having their book published, as you would with self-publishing, but a company handles aspects of publishing that a traditional publisher would normally handle. So this includes editorial work like developmental editing or copy editing and proofreading, the production and the design of the book, like the layout, the formatting, the cover design, and then the marketing and the distribution of the book. Basic packages that include these items or variations thereof range anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000. So it could really run the gamut depending on what you're looking for and who you'd be working with. You know, obviously the dream for most aspiring authors is a traditional publishing deal. But when this doesn't happen, the alternative is usually self-publishing. And now there's this magical third option called hybrid publishing. And it gives you a chance to just be an author without having to learn the entire industry of publishing, which, since I work in it, I know it's a pain in the ass to figure out on your own.
100%. And I was just watching Lemon's Instagram post from a week or something ago, and she was talking about she had finally gotten off submission to selling her book, but she's been in it for, I want to say, almost 10 years in the industry, and she said that to get published now is insane, and that good authors and good works of writing are just not getting picked, and it really has nothing to do with how good you are. You're just not getting picked.
Now she's published before, traditionally published before.
She has 2 books that she has traditionally published, and then I think she ended up losing her agent, and then she just got a new agent and finally submitted, I believe it's her first adult book.
Okay.
So, yeah. And I'm really excited. I'm so excited for it. She's now like giving us teasers, and I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, don't quote me on any of this. If I'm butchering any of the story, I am sorry.
She writes fantasy books?
So our other books are more contemporary, but this book is being dubbed as like a horror, more horror, dark. I think there might be a fantasy element to it. I'm going to keep my eye on it for the book club.
Okay, good, because I'm curious. I know you talk about her all the time, but I haven't read anything by her, so I am very curious to see what she is all about.
I love her as a person, and I will bump her as much as I can.
Okay, we will try our best. Okay, so yeah, it is definitely getting increasingly more difficult to land an agent, to get an editor when you're on sub. So the idea of paying somebody to publish your work because you think it's really good and it deserves to be out there is becoming more and more appealing. When people hear that there's a fee to publish or pay to play, as they say, a lot of people immediately dismiss the idea of hybrid publishing as a vanity publisher. However, a vanity publisher is very different. So they publish your book if you pay them to, and basically you just are on your own after the publication. The vanity presses don't offer much guidance to you in terms of an author or making a career, and they basically will publish any books that come their way. If you're paying for it, they're publishing it. They aren't very discerning, which is why they've gotten such a bad reputation.
Exactly. Just a side tangent for a minute. So it's kind of like, I think you go into this in depth more, but it's kind of like, if you do have this mentioned in it, but you're essentially just paying the money that the traditional publishing house would have put up for you.
Yes, though not always nearly as much. So it takes around $30,000 to $40,000 to publish a book in traditional publishing, and if you're paying only $5,000 or $10,000, obviously that's a big discrepancy there. So you can pay as much as you would, but usually a hybrid publisher is putting in some money on their own, or they're just not. I don't know how actually they keep the costs down, but it's probably just not as much. They're not paying overhead for as many salaries as you are in a major publishing house, so they're just able to keep overhead down, I guess.
Yeah, maybe their output of books is just a little bit higher. Like you said, maybe the quality of the effort behind it or what the package offers might be what keeps the cost lower as well.
Yeah, and you can add, I'll get into this more later, but you can add on a lot of different aspects to it for like marketing and publicity, and that of course raises the price. So you can probably get near to that $30,000 or $40,000 mark if you really want to and add on all these bells and whistles, but you don't always have to. If you just want a book to be published, to be out there, to be distributed reputably, you can do that for a very modest price if you go with a good publisher.
So I'm understanding to layman terms is for everyone.
Which is always good to have.
Essentially what I'm hearing from all this is the fact that a traditional publisher and a hybrid publisher of good quality will be essentially the same thing, but instead of a traditional publisher backing you and putting all their money in the pot and then taking all of the money out and getting the majority of the creative money, a hybrid publisher is almost like a traditional publisher, and with the same features, you're just going to be the one to put the money in, but in putting the money in, you get more money out, right?
Yes, that is true. So what differentiates a good hybrid publisher from a vanity press? There are a few things. One is that a good hybrid press is selective in what it publishes. It has standards, it has submission guidelines, and it has a vetting process. They only publish what they think will actually sell. They're not just going to publish anything that somebody is going to pay for. They also add value by offering professional quality editorial services, cover and interior design, and industry-recognized distribution platforms like Ingram. And they offer a solid marketing plan to get your book in the hands of readers. So the way I see it, if you're self-publishing, you're paying to publish your own book anyway. You're not getting advance, you're not getting anyone else to cover your costs, but you still have to hire professionals or learn how to do publishing yourself. And with a good hybrid publisher, someone is handling all of this work for you. All you have to do is cover the costs. So while there's this stigma around having to pay to publish your work, I don't understand how it's really that different from paying for self-publishing.
I mean, definitely, if you can put up the money because I know you were toting around like $30K, which is a lot.
That does not happen.
I know you're going to touch on more of that a little bit later too, but again, it's the same idea that, yeah, when you have to self-publish, you're going to have to either hire or learn it all by yourself, which I know some of the aspects can be a little easier. I've seen a lot of people download the ebook software and be able to convert their book into ebook very easily. But then you're talking things that you really shouldn't do yourself, even though you're skilled at it, but mostly like especially copy editing. Yes. Is not something I would ever have anyone do, even if like CJ, you're superb. But
I'm not a professional.
But you're close enough. But my point is, you stared at that work so much, you're going to gloss over mistakes. Like, it's just natural. Yeah. You're going to miss things.
Absolutely.
Like, it doesn't matter how good you are. You are too in the trenches to see every mistake.
Yeah.
and you have to pay for those things.
And I've listened to a couple, podcasts or YouTube tutorials about people who have self-published and learned all the things themselves. And even with doing the easy versions of self-publishing through like a software or something, there's still so much work that you have to do to market and publicize your book. Why would I want to do all that work to edit and design and do all that production work as well? There's just so much to do. You're taking on every single burden. I like the idea of having someone who's trained in this to do that work for me, and I just pay them to do it for me. I don't get what the stigma is about having to pay for it, but there seems to be a lot out there for some reason.
I know. You're still getting vetted. I mean, I don't think the vetting process is as intense as, say, a traditional publishing, because most of the time they not only have to look at the quality of your book, but they're also looking at what is the market and can I make money on you. Whereas with a hybrid publisher, in my opinion, is that they're not looking at how much they can market your book, and now they're taking that out of the equation, which is kind of what we need, and they're looking more of, is your book good?
Yeah.
They're not looking at, can I sell this book? Because that's still on the author now. But they're looking more of just like, is this a good book?
Yeah. And they absolutely do want to sell it because they do get income from the sales. But it's not like, can I, bust through the bottom line or whatever it is. Like all these agents and these publishing houses all want to sign the next bestseller. And you're not everything is a bestseller. Some are just really nice books or really good books. And that's okay. You don't have to be... I was going to say J.K. Rowling, but that's probably not a good one to mention these days. Colleen Hoover with every book that you write,
No one can meet J.K. Rowling's numbers now. Like,
that's
to be
true.
Honest, she's an anomaly anyway, whether or not we want to say her name.
That is absolutely true. So not every book is going to be that. And you know what? That's okay. There are plenty of books that I have loved that have not made bestseller lists, that have only been published by, the author's only published that one book. It's just what happens. And everybody deserves a bit of a chance, is what I think.
It's also kind of weird because being in, especially in the space post-COVID, of getting the ARCs and seeing the advertisements of the books, how much I feel that the audience is getting brainwashed into reading certain books. To be totally honest with you, I got an ARC for a book I will not name, and the way that this has been just everywhere, and the advertisements that have started appearing on my Instagram and the comments I've gotten on my video, I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Is it because this book is good, or is this because they're pushing it so hard, and that's where they're the eggs in that basket?
Yeah. That's actually one of the reasons I don't like to review all new releases on my blog. This year I've actually accepted more ARCs than I have in past years, and I'm doing a lot more new releases. And I've already committed to that, so I'm doing that. But my intention for next year is to, number one, post more often, and also post like a new release and then a backlist title, a new release and then a backlist title, because there are so many great books out there, and people just miss them because, like you said, publishers are promoting 5% of their entire list over and over and over again, and the rest of the 95 just gets lost in the shuffle.
Oh, I love that. I've definitely been doing a lot of backlist titles lately, so that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The other thing, I wanted to make a comment on something you said, which is the marketing plan. Because you said that a good hybrid publisher would provide you with a marketing plan. And I believe you mentioned this later about you have to pay for that yourself anyway, correct? correct? Like a
So you pay for publicity, which is a little bit different
Okay.
from marketing, from what I understand.
Okay, so going from the marketing perspective, so by putting this money, think about you're self-publishing without any help and you have to learn to market your book. Marketing your book is kind of the same idea of having to learn how to do SEOs. You know, we have to pay for...
I cannot. I've had to take a break with SEO, so yeah.
But
Dude,
what
why
I'm
would I do
saying
this
is,
myself?
like, I don't want to use Instagram or social media as an example to get out there, but there are things that, you know, people get degrees in marketing. There are things that you have to do. There's certain artwork and that you have to make, and there's certain ways to do it, and it's bringing the attention to you. And so in a way you would already have to pay for a program to be able to learn how to market your book. I mean, I have a friend who's in the medical field and she's trying to start her own practice, and she had to hire someone to teach her how to market her business. It's not just art and social media, it's so much more, driving traffic to what you need. And so you're gonna have to pay for that anyway, and this is at least offered. And the other positive I'm seeing with hybrid publishing is the fact that you're being given a vetted group of people. You're not having to go on Readsy or these freelance websites and be like, okay, who am I going to trust that is going to do a decent job on my book? You would hope that most of these people are extremely well versed, they're in the industry and they know what they're doing and they're well done, and you don't have to now do the research of who to pick.
For the most part, that is true. I did actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I did actually see a little bit of a discrepancy between the industry professionals and the two hybrid publishers that I have talked to. So I think this is a good transition into that, actually.
You're welcome.
Oh, well done, well done. All right, so I am going to talk about my firsthand experience with hybrid publishers. So over the past few months, I have talked with two different hybrid publishers that are well known in the industry. I've had detailed conversations about production, editorial, marketing, distribution plans with somebody at each place, and I've been offered publication from both companies, which was awesome. As you know, I turned down the one publisher because they were fantastic, but way too expensive. And I turned down the second publisher because while they were much cheaper than the first, I feel they didn't offer the same high level of services that I felt the first publisher did. So obviously, I'm not going to reveal the names of the companies, but for ease of conversation, this is how we're going to refer to them. There is the $30,000 publisher, or the $30K publisher, which is obviously the one that I loved and wished I could sign with, but cannot afford to. And then there's the $10,000 publisher, or the 10K publisher, which is the one that offers several different publishing plans ranging from $5,000 to $15,000, and most of which are decent, but to me, again, it still seems like they're not offering the best options for aspiring authors. Okay, so my initial meetings will start with the 30K publisher. I submitted my proposal and I was contacted soon after. I had a virtual meeting with the editor and it went great. We had a great conversation. Our aspirations seemed to line up. I was seeing like, oh my God, this is what I meant to do. This is who I was meant to find. And although the editor was still in the middle of reading my manuscript, she had lots of good things to say about my book, and she was able to point out a few things that would need to be addressed, like in a pre-pub round of editing. And this was good, and I wasn't surprised because almost every book needs to be edited before it's published. Whether you're working with an agent or an editor in traditional publishing, probably both are going to ask you to do some kind of edits before they send it out. So a few days after that meeting, I received an email from that publisher saying they would love to publish Hugely Ever After, and they emailed me their publishing proposal. And the proposal again mentioned specific praise for my story, my characters, my grasp of women's fiction, and the international potential for my book. It was very clear that the editor had read the book, had thought about it, and really believed in the success and marketability of my story, which is why I was on cloud nine. It just, everything seemed to align. But we're going to stop and compare this experience to when I first talked with the 10K publisher, because it was an entirely different and thoroughly disappointing experience. Because right from the get-go, it was obvious that the editor I met with had not read my manuscript. He had not even read my proposal, my query letter that I sent. He had no knowledge of what my specific book was about. I asked the editor some very basic questions that any author should ask when you consider signing with a literary agent or a publisher, like what is the general editorial plan? Do you think I would need any kind of revisions? What what do you see as the success potential of this book? And this editor had nothing to say. He wasn't prepared for this meeting at all. It was just mind-boggling, and I got so pissed off. He didn't even seem to know what my title was. And he gave me a lot of bullshit answers, a lot of generic things that could be applied to any kind of book. Like, oh, well, there's dialogue, and then there's not dialogue. And then we have to cut out the areas that aren't great for the plot. And I'm just like, this is nothing specific. You've not even read anything. So it just made me feel like my story was picked simply because, one, it was better than some others they received, because he made sure to point out that we receive thousands of submissions every year, and we only pick like a certain number a month. And I was that certain number of month, but also I'm going to pay them. So they're going to publish it. And I have a platform already through blogging and through podcasting. So they think I'm going to be able to sell it a lot more than maybe another type of debut author would be able to. So while I don't think the 10K publisher is just publishing anybody who gives them money, I don't think they're a vanity press. They do seem willing to publish anyone good who will give them money and has a strong platform already.
Do you think that someone else vetted your book for the 10K and then he was handed it to do the meeting?
I do think so. Like, he mentioned that there's like a couple of rounds that it goes through, and people kind of make their decision. Does it meet this criteria, meet that criteria? Which I understand. But if you're going to talk to me about my book, at least read the proposal.
Yeah.
100%. You know, I asked.
Yeah, I'm not trying to like give him like a pass. I was just like, the difference that it's definitely not a vanity is that it did go through a vetting process. It just maybe he wasn't the final person to make the decision. But 100%, you should have at least read your proposal and have a general, like, read the first 10 pages or something, right? Like, just to have a general idea of like who you are. I mean, you're gonna have to have a relationship with this person.
Exactly. And I even asked, I even said to him that I've had some agents who have been like, oh, well, we don't think this is unique enough, or maybe it's too unique because of the hygge aspect. And I said specifically, why do you think this will work when other agents have decided to pass? And he had nothing to tell me. There was absolutely nothing. And I'm like, well, this isn't the kind of relationship that I want to build. So for me, that was very lackluster. And that is ultimately why I did not go with that publisher, because it didn't feel like they were going to be the best one for what I was looking for.
So if we are providing advice to someone who wanted to, say, look into hybrid publishing, I would say explore a lot of options, because some it sounds like some are definitely better than others. And if you have a bad experience, it doesn't mean that the whole idea of hybrid publishing is bad. Exactly. It could just be that specific, publishing. And
yeah, and there are shady literary agents out there. There are shady traditional publishers out there. There's shadiness everywhere. So even if you're going the traditional publishing route, as we've discussed before, you should always be doing your research. You should always ask to see lists of comp titles, to see who they've published before, check certain things out about them. And the same goes with hybrid publishers. Just do your homework, do your research, and just make the best decision you can based on what you found. And your gut. Yeah. If your gut's telling you this is not right for me, listen to it.
So for me, when I'm looking at all of this, when you essentially decide that you want to go hybrid publishing, you have made the decision that you are now your own agent. You are the agent. You're going to now play the role of your agent. So possibly having someone look over the contract as well, or having a general idea of what should be in a contract from other authors who've been traditionally published. I know some of them have said, okay, you want to, like, my agent fought for me to keep my audio rights. Not an example, but because I think I'll ask that question in a minute. But I'm just saying, like, generally know what you need in your contract.
Yeah.
But when you pick hybrid publishing, now that you're the agent, you are essentially jumping to the step of submission. And you are sending your book out to editors, like your agent would if you're traditionally published, and you're going to editors to be picked by a imprint or publishing house to publish you, and to get your editor in the whole process. So it's funny that we're talking about this, because I have another author I'm following, Victoria Aveyard, I'm bad at pronouncing last names. And she right now is on submission. And with her being kind enough to share, she's been talking about working, like sending her book, her manuscript out to editors now and all this stuff. And it was funny because I was watching a video about her updating everyone today, and she was talking about how she has already gotten some rejections, and it was along the lines of, I liked the book, but I didn't like this aspect, or I liked this, but this wasn't here. And she made the point is that you need to find an editor that is all guns blazing for your book and is so excited and is going to carry this thing through the whole fruition. And that's the same thing when it comes to the process of picking your hybrid publisher. You want to be able to pick someone that is going to champion your book, that is going to be your best friend on this process and hold your hand and do all of that. Yeah. Because this is the person you're going to have to work closely with, be vulnerable with in a way, trust their opinion on what they suggest you change in your book and all of that. Even though they're hybrid publishers, that doesn't matter. It's still the same relationship. Yeah. So to do a good job in this, you do really need to go to a bunch of different hybrid publishers to find the person that will work well with you and have a relationship with.
Absolutely. And, a good hybrid publisher will also encourage you to get bids from different places and to explore your options, because they know that, there's a couple players in the game who are really good and they might not be the best fit for you. I was encouraged to get other options, which I did. I did my research, and, the one I really wanted to go with, I can't afford. But still, it's kind of still there in the back of my mind as, the relationship that could exist, because that would be what I would want.
If you find that $30,000 on the side of the road.
Right. Just see a check laying there and just be like, oh, this is for publishing. Exactly. That would be perfect.
Quick question. I don't know if you have an answer to, but in talking to these hybrid publishing houses, were you given the option to talk to any other editors in there if you didn't see a fit, or that was the only editor you would get with the publisher?
So the editors I talked to were kind of like the project managers. So they would be overseeing the different aspects of editing and design and production layout and marketing. And so I believe, at least for the 30K one, I would be paired with an editor, but I'm sure that I would have the option to maybe switch or discuss concerns that I may have before. I don't know if before signing the contract or not, but there is a lot of information on their website, with both of their websites actually, about their editors and their experiences and what they've worked on. So you're able to make a good judgment when you're just doing your research again online.
Oh, okay, just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I really liked about the 30K publisher is that they offered, or a lot of their editors have been editors at major publishing houses before, like traditional houses, or they're literary agents with a lot of editorial experience. And what I didn't like about the 10K publisher is that a lot of their editors were just writers. And it's not to say that writers don't have editorial experience, but I want to work with somebody who has a lot of that editing experience. That's where I would lack my skills. I'm a great writer. I'm not a great developmental editor. So why am I going to pay you to do the same job I could do? I want a real editor,
You're selling this to me.
I know. It just sounds so good. It just sounds like the solution to all the problems. And I know it's not. I know there's so many problems. Like, if you're putting money into your book with a hybrid publisher, there is a very strong possibility that you might not make back the money that you put into it, whether it's with a 10K publisher or a 30K publisher. Absolutely, with the 30K publisher, you are not making that shit back. Definitely not with your first book. But maybe with the 5 or 10K, you have a chance of doing that. Self-publishing really gives you the best chance at making your money back. But I don't know, it just... to have a book out there, to be a published author... If you're going to have a long career, maybe it's the right thing for some people. I'm sure it is the right thing for some people.
To be the caveat in all of this, every other business that you would start, you have to put money into, Yeah. And if you want a complete experience of being... the whole package of being like traditionally published, but you're not getting picked because the market is just bazonkers and I don't know. Yeah. This 30K one sounds like you would have almost the entire same experience of being traditionally published with the same quality. You're just the one backing yourself instead of someone else throwing money at you.
That is the perfect way to say it. You are backing yourself. And yes, that the 30K publisher felt just like a quote real publisher. You know, I got an arc from them. It looks like a book. Like I looked at it, I'm like, this is a book. There's blurbs on it. There's endorsements. You look at the back of it and there's a publicity campaign mentioned on it. The cover is really good and the font is really good. It looks like something you would see on a shelf in Target or Barnes and Noble. And you'd be like, oh, hey, this looks good. And you would never think that it wasn't published by like one of the big five. And I started reading that book last night. It's really good. It's really, really good. And now, like, I just want to work with them even more because this is exactly the type of women's fiction that I am writing and I want to be out there in the world. Like, it was bittersweet. It was a bittersweet reading moment at like 2 a.m.
And though I know you can make your own publishing house, you know, quasi-publishing house when you self-publish, because I personally think it's a good idea to have some sort of name on the spine that looks legit of more publishers. Yeah. When you hybrid, you're getting a more concrete, more well-established publishing name behind you that people might recognize. And I have to say, I've been seeing a lot of books popping up on Goodreads that have enticed me, and I've gotten them from my library, and I'm honestly can't telling if they're like hybrid self-publishing or if they're trad published. Like, it's kind of like this new thing is flooding the market intensely.
Yeah. And if they're using... Sorry, go ahead.
So I was gonna ask, like, I don't know if you know the answer, and I kind of wish I had researched this before this podcast, and we might have to like do something, but what's this independent publishing thing? Because that's not hybrid, that's still trad publishing, right? No idea.
So there's so I actually was talking to somebody about this. Oh my god, there is a spider on my book. Hold on, everyone, there we have to kill something.
I'm leaving that in. I'm sorry. I'm leaving
independent. I was actually talking. I'm going to pretend like that didn't happen. Like a vicious murder did not just happen
on a dark podcast.
On the dark podcast.
You did not hold back there.
I go real dark when spiders come along. So there's this book I really want to read by, I think, a horror author, Rachel, I don't think it's Harris, but maybe Rachel Harris. And I think it's called Crackle, but it has spiders in it. And I keep hearing amazing things about this book, but I'm so terrified that I will not be able to ever like just stop twitching and feel like I need 10 billion showers if I read this book, because that you just saw what happens to me when a spider comes near me.
Ron Weasley said it right. Why couldn't it be follow the pretty butterflies?
Exactly. Ron, I hear you. I feel it. Okay, so back to publishing. I was actually talking with somebody about my foray into hybrid publishing, and she was steering me more toward alternatives like independent presses or, you know, boutique presses, I guess they're called as well. And some of them do offer advances. Some of them do offer to cover your production costs, which is great. They just don't offer like huge advances. Not that traditional publishing, like the big five, are offering huge advances all the time anyway. But it does seem like another avenue to explore. And she did send me some links that I'm going to be looking at to see if anything would be a good fit. There are some places that also have open submission periods that are like smaller. You don't need an agent to go through them. And some of these boutique presses and independent ones, you don't need an agent all the time either. So it's another avenue to try if you're poor like me and can't afford the good publisher and want to still get something out there.
I know in the scheme of starting a business, 30K is not a lot, but in the scheme of just having $1,000.
Yeah.
30K is too much.
To spend on making a book, like 30K, like that's half of a mortgage, or not a mortgage, but like a down payment on a house. That's like a car. That is something that's paying off, you know, my husband's student loan. So to put that money on, I'm not going to say frivolous, because being published is not frivolous, but compared to everything else, it seems frivolous to do something so self-gratifying, you know?
Well, it's not as a concrete of a business that you feel like, yeah, I'm going to make my money, it's going to become this big thing. Book publishing is just so fickle. Yeah. It's a monster.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you mentioned something before about how a lot of industries, you have to put money in before you can start to see something. That's exactly what my therapist mentioned when I was telling her about this opportunity. She's like, my son or son-in-law or somebody does something with music, and his band had to cut their own album and pay for their intro album to, to give out to people and stuff. And they do that with their own money. And if they go on tour, they do that with their own money until they make it big. So yeah, publishing is one of the areas where you don't do that, and it's kind of frowned upon if you do that, which is very weird in my opinion. Yeah, why? What's with the stigma? If you're going to pay to have your book published by yourself, why not pay an industry professional to publish it for you?
Why can't we just flip it all on its head? Yeah. And we are able to do this, and then the top publishers pick the people they like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a popularity game anyway.
Seriously. So that is what just seems so appealing to me. It gives more power back to the author. And I think right now we're seeing that writers just have so little power, aspiring authors have so little power. And it feels like, from what we're hearing on, Book Talk and Instagram, a lot of traditionally published authors feel like they don't have power. There's people who are getting Netflix deals, but most of them are not. And their rights all belong to a publisher or a company or something, and their hands are tied with a lot of stuff. So I like the idea of having another alternative.
I know, as much as I said earlier that they feels like they're brainwashing the books into our head, I feel that even the triad publishers don't even know what book is going to take off next. Because I don't believe Fourth Wing had any sort of extra push behind it. It just exploded.
Just took off.
And then she got all the love.
I mean, who read 50 Shades of Grey and was like, oh man, this is just going to skyrocket and do 3 movies?
Who read it on Wattpad? And then said all that. Let's not forget. Same with the After series. Who originally read that on Wattpad and then was like, it's going to become this whole franchise.
Yeah. So you never know. And I want somebody to take a chance on me. And I want to find somebody who's going to do that.
But sometimes we have to pick ourselves.
Exactly. Take a chance on yourself. So
now,
go ahead.
Sorry. I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
That, if you can't answer, I understand you're under contractual NDA kind of thing.
Yes.
1, do you keep the rights to your book?
Yes. With most hybrid publishers, I believe, the good hybrid publishers, you do keep all the rights to your book. You can
that's huge.
Elect to... Yeah, that's absolutely humongous. So for subsidiary rights, like translation rights or creating an audio book or
movies.
Book club rights, movies, yeah. That you can control that. You can get your own agent to control that. You could pay some of these hybrid publishers to do that for you too. They have plans for that.
Oh.
But different tiered, of course, more money. But you have options, which is not usually what you have with traditional publishing.
Okay, all right. And then I know that you mentioned before royalties. They take a percentage, but you generally keep majority of it since you're putting the most money in? You keep the
majority of it. A good hybrid publisher will let the author keep 50 to 70% of the sales income, which is way better than what you get with traditional publishing. It's calculated differently, but it's still more in the long run.
And last question, and kind of the hardest. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw you a hardball here.
Okay. I'm ready, I think.
Now with the 10 to 15K publishing range for that level of hybrid publishing, if someone chose, because from my experience in the research I've done of having to find your own stuff, even if you decide to self-publish, depending on the length of your book, you probably are going to spend 10 to 15K to be able to put out a quality product. Definitely. And I'm going to emphasize this, friends. If you want to self-publish, you still need to put quality work out there. If you have any hopes of ever getting to some big surmountable height, you need to pay for the proper editors. You need to have a graphic design understanding or hire an amazing cover designer, and you need to have quality product. And from the research I've done, 10 to 15K is still the amount that you're probably going to end up paying as self-published.
It's comparable, definitely.
So, hardball question.
Yeah.
Do you recommend picking a 10 to 15K hybrid publisher since you're paying the same price, or would you suggest, since you talk to these people, or would you suggest, no, go at your own, it's not even worth the low price?
If it's the right hybrid publisher, like the one I talked to was not the right one for me. I want a lot more editorial work. I want a bit more in marketing, a lot of publicity stuff I can do myself since I do have a platform already. If I found a hybrid publisher with the right platform and the right price, I would probably go with them if I hadn't found a traditional publishing deal by a certain point.
So you would trust, say, picking a random editor on the internet versus a hybrid that has it?
Oh no, I would work with a hybrid publisher and see who they have. I would look to see what their editors do online. I would before I signed a contract, I would probably want to know who I would be paired with, or they would suggest I would be paired with, and maybe have a little conversation generally with that person before I signed anything. Because I agree, you definitely have to have a good vision together about not only your book but your career. And when I talked to the $30,000 publisher, I made it very clear that I am looking for a career. I have a lot of books I want to publish. I want to go the long haul. I want to bring somebody a lot of money, including myself. So I would want to form a relationship. So it wouldn't be just going with whoever they paired me with. I would want some say in that.
Okay. So I guess to understand the answer, so even if you couldn't find a good editor for you, would you still go hybrid versus just cold turkeying it with self-publishing yourself?
Oh, I see. No. The editor is really important to me. If I couldn't find a good editor through hybrid, I would look for a good developmental editor and self-publish.
Okay. I think that's the biggest question here, because now when you're talking 10 to 15K, it's like, well, which one?
Yeah.
And, if someone can really connect, I would say hybrid. If with your answer, if they could really connect.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I even know that there are some really famous editors and literary agents that have actually decided to go the freelance route. So there are positive people that you can find out there. Because I know Jay Kristoff's editor went to freelance for his original series that he did. The editor that pulled him out of the slush pile.
Oh wow.
So I know, right? I'm like, how do I get her help? And
I feel like that you hear
that
and you never really hear of it happening to too many people with the slush pile. That's how Kirsten White was discovered, in the slush pile. I'll be a slush pile.
Now I want money. I want to go hybrid.
With the right one, yeah. I feel like my path was meant to cross with that 30K publisher, because there's something that's going to come out of it for me. I'm not sure if it's actually going to be publishing with them. Probably not, unless they have a huge sale on things. But it taught me a lot about what I'm looking for, what is important to me. And it gave me a new line of hope. Because as we know, the traditional route, trying to find an agent, I think I've gotten another request from an agent for my manuscript, which is lovely. But, this is 15 or 16 now, and I don't mean to sound flippant about that. It's wonderful, but, I know. And I'm very grateful for that progress, but it's 16 publishers saying, oh, and they almost all have the same type of response. I just didn't fall in love with it as I'd hoped. And I'm like, what the fuck is that about? Just tell me why. One sentence, tell me. We've gone into that. And to hear from somebody who said, I really loved your book. I love the story. I love the characters. It meant something to me. I think it could mean something to somebody else. I'm actually getting teary right now, because that's all we want to hear, right, writers? That's all we want to hear, and it just gives you enough to keep going.
You didn't just get a yes. You got someone who was guns blazing for your book. I want to give you $30,000.
I just start a Kickstarter, a GoFundMe, whatever it is.
I know, right? But you said the most important thing, which is, I really want to reiterate in the industry topic. We're trying to give our advice, we're trying to educate you all. But I think if you're going to walk away with anything in this episode, CJ said it perfectly. She found what she really wanted out of all of this. She, maybe you won't end up getting traditionally published, and you're able to afford a great hybrid publisher. But the thing is that you're staying true to what you want your career and your art to be represented. And you have to sit with yourself. If you're going to be writing your own do all this, you really have to sit with yourself and have an ironclad spine of what you want and to hold on to that, because no one else is going to do this for you. No one else is going to hold your hand as you're crying over 100 rejections.
Yep.
And if you want to keep going and survive all this, you have to know what you want. You have to feel confident in that and not get back down.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I loved this episode. Thank you, CJ.
I do. I like it too. It's nice to explore a new avenue in publishing. It's nice to talk about it from a personal perspective and then from an industry perspective. And it's nice to maybe hear that I turned somebody on to the idea a little bit more, you know?
Well, I need the $30,000 too, so.
Well, there are other publishers than A and B, everyone. So keep doing research. You'll probably find more in between those people.
I have pre-screened a lot of books, and I could probably honestly tell you I have not run across the same hybrid publishing house twice.
Really? Wow.
Really. And there was one that I had sent to CJ after she had done all this. I was like, oh, look at this one. So there are really good ones still out there. So do your research again. This is just to spark your interest. This is not to tell you what to do. Okay.
Yeah, it's an awareness. It's a PSA, because we didn't know. Well, you knew a little bit about it. I didn't know anything about this at all, and my mind was just like, possibilities. So that's what we're giving you, possibilities. I'm so glad we have camera now, so I can do that. It doesn't sound like I'm just making a weird mouth fart on the recording. They can actually see the brain exploding.
Exactly. Alrighty, friends. Don't forget that next episode will be our book club episode, and we are reading My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Von Veen. So if you haven't gotten your book yet, don't forget you can use our bookshop links below to buy yourself a copy. It helps us keep the lights on and keep producing this content for you. But anywho, thank you so much for listening to The Dark Side of the Word, a dark podcast for all the dark story lovers. If you like this video, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Otherwise, we are an audio-only podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart. But thanks, friends, so much. Please leave a comment. Go visit Spotify. We have polls and questions on there specifically for each episode. And thank you so much for joining us today. Bye.
Bye.